galaxy burned. Across 1,000,000 worlds, the Imperium of Man waged its eternal war against nightmares made flesh, and on the hive world of Vaxus Tertius, that war had already been lost. The planetary capital screamed its death throes as the warp bled through reality, spilling Khorne's legions into the material plane. Blood ran in rivers through hab-block ruins. Demon engines crushed fleeing civilians beneath brass claws. The sky itself had turned crimson, and through the sulphurous smoke, the laughter of thirsting gods echoed across Vox channels already choked with screams. The Astra Militarum's 43rd Cadian Regiment had made their final stand at the Administratum Cathedral. 2,000 guardsmen against the infinite. They'd lasted 6 hours before the bloodletters breached the consecrated walls. Now only corpses remained, their blood feeding the ritual that would drag the entire world into the warp. Then the rift tore wider, not a warp portal, something else. Reality split. Like meat beneath a blade, an emerald light flooded the demon-choked plaza. The air itself recoiled. Every demon in proximity turned toward the breach, sensing prey or challenger. In Khorne's service there was no difference. He stepped through. The figure stood 7 feet tall in armor, the color of aged bronze and battle-scarred ceramite. His praetor suit bore gouges that would have shattered Space Marine plate, yet held. No insignia, no purity seals, no imperial aquila or chapter markings. The helmet, a brutal angular thing with a visor like a predator's glare, tracked across the demon horde with mechanical precision. In his right hand, a double-barreled shotgun materialized from the suit's weapon system. In his left, something that looked like a chainsaw had mated with a sword and been blessed by murder itself. The Slayer said nothing. He never did. The first bloodletter charged with a howl that shattered windows 3 blocks away, its hellblade raised to split this. Strange warrior from crown to groin, eager to claim a skull for the throne. The Slayer moved, not with a Space Marine's practiced efficiency, but with something older, faster. The shotgun roared twice, consecrated buckshot in the Doom universe, raw kinetic fury here, and the demon's torso exploded into ichor and warp stuff. Before its body could dissipate, the Slayer had already moved to the next target. The chainsaw blade howled to life. He drove it through a bloodletter's chest, ripped upward, then kicked the bisected demon into 3 more. The shotgun barked again. Another demon's head vaporized. The Slayer didn't pause, didn't slow, didn't tire. He waded into the horde like a man walking through smoke. This was what he did, what he'd always done, what he would always do. The demons came at him in waves. Fleshhounds bounded over rubble. Bloodletters surrounded him in a circle of hellblades. A bloodthirster, a greater demon of Khorne, 20 feet of brass and muscle and impossible fury, bellowed its challenge and descended on burning wings. The Slayer looked up. The bloodthirster's axe, which had cleaved titans, came down with the weight of a god's rage. The Slayer sidestepped. The axe buried itself 6 feet into the rockcrete. Before the greater demon could wrench it free, the Slayer had leaped onto its arm, sprinted up its shoulder, and drove his chainsaw into the side of its skull. The demon shrieked, a sound that shattered every window in the district, and tried to grab him. Too slow. The Slayer had already vaulted to its back, braced his feet against its spine, and fired both barrels point blank into the base of its skull. The bloodthirster crashed to its knees. The Slayer rode it down, drew a plasma rifle from nowhere, the praetor suit's dimensional storage activating, and fired until the greater demon's head was molten ruin. When it finally dissipated back into the warp, the Slayer landed in a crouch amidst its smoking remains. Silence fell over the plaza. Every surviving demon stared at the armored figure. In the warp, something vast and ancient stirred. Khorne's attention had been caught. The blood god felt something he hadn't experienced in eons. Curiosity. What manner of mortal was this? What warrior could kill a greater demon in solo combat without prayer, without faith, without even a battle cry? The Slayer answered by loading fresh shells and walking toward the next cluster of demons. 3 blocks away, hidden in the ruins of a Hab unit, Inquisitor Cassian Voke of the Ordo Malleus watched through his bionic eye's magnification. His 2 remaining acolytes, both hardened veterans of demon purges, stood frozen in disbelief. They'd witnessed space marines fall to bloodletters. They'd seen entire companies consumed by Khorne's servants. And now they watched a single warrior butcher his way through a demonic incursion with the casual efficiency of a man harvesting wheat. "Impossible," breathed Interrogator Silas. "No mortal can survive that. No mortal can kill a greater demon without faith, without the Emperor's blessing." "He's not using faith," Voke interrupted, his augmetic eye cycling through spectra. "Thermal, warp sight, psi-reactive. There's no psychic signature, no blessing I can detect. No warp taint. Emperor's throne, he's not even corrupted. How is he not corrupted?" The Slayer grabbed a bloodletter by the throat mid-lunge, used it as a club to beat 2 more to death, then tore its head off bare-handed. Argent energy, what this galaxy called warp energy, flowed into him from each kill. He could feel himself growing stronger. Good. There were more demons ahead, many more. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Voke activated his Vox. This is Inquisitor Voke to any surviving Imperial forces. I have eyes on an unknown combatant engaging Chaos forces in Grid Sigma 7, requesting immediate Astartes support and containment protocols. Threat level unknown, potentially Alpha class anomaly. The Slayer didn't care about their Vox chatter, didn't care about their Imperium or their Emperor. He'd found what he always found, demons wearing different faces, and he would do what he always did, rip and tear. The Ultramarine strike cruiser Blade of Macraga received Voke's transmission 14 minutes after the Slayer had begun his slaughter. Captain Titus of the 2nd Company listened to the garbled report twice, his enhanced mind processing the impossibility of what the Inquisitor described. A single mortal warrior, unarmored by Astartes standards, killing greater demons in melee combat, uncorrupted by prolonged warp exposure. "Prepare drop pods," Titus commanded. "Full tactical squad. If this is a demon trick, we purge it. If it's genuine." He paused, the weight of 10,000 years of warfare in his voice. "Then the Imperium needs to know what it is." Brother Sergeant Gaius and his squad made planetfall in a thunder of retro rockets. Their Corvus pattern helmets scanned the ruined plaza, Auspex readings painting a picture that defied logic. Demon corpse residue everywhere, warp taint saturating the air, and one life sign, human baseline, moving steadily deeper into the incursion zone. They found him in what had been a manufacturum district. The Slayer stood atop a mound of dissipating demon corpses, reloading his shotgun with mechanical precision. Around him, reality itself seemed wounded. Tears in the warp leaking demonic essence, unstable and hungry. He didn't acknowledge the Space Marine's arrival. His visor simply tracked to them, assessed, categorized as non-demon, and dismissed. Then he turned and continued walking toward the warp rift's epicenter. "Halt!" Gaius commanded, his voice amplified through his helmet's Vox grill. "In the name of the Emperor and the Ultramarines chapter, identify yourself." The Slayer kept walking. A 10-foot bloodletter materialized from a tear in reality, Hellblade raised. The Slayer's shotgun came up without him breaking stride. Both barrels. The demon exploded. The Slayer grabbed its dissipating hellblade from the air, examined it for half a second, then hurled it like a javelin through another demon, emerging 20 meters away. Perfect accuracy, no hesitation. "Brother Sergeant," voxed Brother Amadeus, the squad's veteran. "His armor, that's not Imperial manufacture. Not Mechanicus blessed, but those demon kills. He's moving at near Astartes combat speed, enhanced, certainly, but how?" Gaius switched to a private channel with Inquisitor Voke, who had joined their position. "Lord Inquisitor, what are we looking at?" Voke's bionic eye whirred, cycling through analysis modes. "I've been monitoring him for 18 minutes. He's killed 47 lesser demons and 3 greater demons in that time. No prayer, no invocation of the Emperor, no purity seals or consecrated weapons. He just kills them, efficiently, endlessly." The Inquisitor's voice held something between awe and horror. "And the warp has no grip on him. I've seen psychers with a century of training resist corruption. I've seen saints blessed by the Emperor himself stand against demonic temptation. This man doesn't resist corruption. It's like it doesn't even recognize him." The Slayer stopped, not because of the Ultramarines, not because of the Inquisitor's scrutiny. He stopped because the ground ahead split open, and a demon prince of Khorne clawed its way into reality. 40 feet of twisted flesh and brass armor, wings that dripped molten blood, a sword forged from 1,000 screaming souls. It had been a mortal once, a champion who'd earned the blood god's ultimate blessing. Now it was Khorne's will made manifest. It roared. The sound shattered stone. Lesser men would have gone mad from the psychic pressure alone. The Slayer tilted his head slightly, then reached to his back and drew the crucible. The blade ignited with energy that made the Ultramarines' auspex scream warnings. Not warp energy, not exactly. Something else, something older. The blade extended 7 feet of concentrated killing light, humming with a frequency that seemed to exist outside normal reality. "That weapon," Gaius began. The demon prince lunged, faster than something that size had any right to move. Its blade came down with enough force to split a land raider. The Slayer dodged left, came up inside the demon's guard, and drove the crucible up through its abdomen and into its chest. The energy blade didn't just cut demonic flesh, it unmade it. The demon prince's scream cut off mid-howl as its essence was consumed, not banished back to the warp, but actually destroyed, burned away by the crucible's terrible light. It took 4 seconds. When the demon's corpse collapsed into ash and fading warp residue, the Slayer deactivated the crucible, mag-locked it to his back, and resumed walking. Brother Amadeus spoke what they were all thinking. He just perma-killed a demon prince. True killed it. That weapon, Emperor's throne, what is he? Voke stepped forward, his rosette displayed prominently. "I invoke my authority as Inquisitor of the Ordo Malleus. That warrior must be taken into custody for examination. We need to understand." The Slayer's head turned. For the first time, he looked directly at them. The visor revealed nothing, but the Ultramarines felt it, the weight of his gaze. There was no malice in it, no rage, just cold, infinite purpose. He'd been killing demons since before their chapter existed, since before the Imperium itself, perhaps, and he would continue killing them long after everything else had turned to dust. Then he looked away and kept walking. "Should we restrain him, Brother Sergeant?" asked Brother Castor, hand moving toward his bolt pistol. Gaius hesitated. In his 3 centuries of service, he'd faced orc war bosses, Tyranid hive tyrants, and chaos champions. He knew when he was looking at something dangerous. This warrior wasn't hostile to the Imperium, hadn't even acknowledged them as relevant, but trying to stop him felt like trying to stop a force of nature. "Follow him," Gaius decided. "Observe. Report to Captain Titus if he's killing demons. We don't interfere, but we need to know where he came from and what he wants." They followed the Slayer deeper into the corrupted zones, watched him butcher his way through horrors that would require full Terminator squads to combat, watched him absorb what looked like warp energy from each kill, growing stronger instead of corrupted, watched reality itself seem to recoil from his presence. And in the warp, Khorne watched too. The blood god saw this warrior and felt something new, not fear, gods do not fear, but recognition. This mortal understood war in its purest form. No politics, no faith, no mercy, only the eternal dance of predator and prey. Khorne wanted him, not as a servant, this one would never kneel, but as a challenge, as the ultimate trophy, as proof that even the most perfect killer could be broken and claimed. The blood god began to plan, and across the galaxy his champions received their new directive. Find the silent warrior, claim him, or die trying. The great game had found a new player. The Vox transmission reached the Macraga's honor 6 hours after the Slayer's emergence. Lord Commander Roboute Guilliman, returned son of the Emperor and Lord Regent of the Imperium, stood in the Strategium reviewing tactical displays of the Great Rift's latest incursions. Captain Titus delivered his report personally, his words carefully chosen. A single warrior, uncorrupted, killing greater demons in solo combat. Guilliman's voice carried the weight of 10 millennia. "You understand how this sounds, Captain?" "I have picked feed from Brother Gaius's helmet cam, my lord, and Inquisitor Voke's testimony." Guilliman watched the grainy footage, watched the Slayer tear through Khorne's legions with emotionless efficiency, watched the Crucible unmake a demon prince. His enhanced mind calculated combat speeds, analyzed weapon technology, assessed threat potential. When the footage ended, he was silent for 30 seconds. "Where is he now?" "Still on Vaxus Tertius, my lord. He's moving toward the primary warp rift. Inquisitor Voke believes he intends to close it." "Alone?" "He's killed everything between him and the objective, Lord Commander. Alone." Guilliman's jaw tightened. After his resurrection, after witnessing what the Imperium had become in his absence, he'd learned to recognize assets when the galaxy provided them. And this was either the greatest asset the Imperium had encountered in centuries, or the most dangerous threat since the heresy. "I want him found, I want him understood, and if he can be brought into Imperial service." Guilliman didn't finish. They both knew what even one warrior of that capability could mean. "Deploy the first company, seal that rift, and bring me this Slayer." On Vaxus Tertius, the warrior in question had no interest in Imperial politics. The warp rift pulsed ahead, a wound in reality 50 meters wide. Blood letters poured through in endless streams. Behind them, the geometry of the warp itself pressed. Against the veil, non-Euclidean architecture, brass fortresses floating in seas of blood, the distant sound of a trillion screams compressed into music. The Slayer had seen worse. Hell's landscape had prepared him for any nightmare. This was just another battlefield, another breach to seal, another eternity of demons to kill. He switched weapons. The BFG 9000 materialized in his hands, the Praetor suit's storage systems pulling it from dimensional space. In his universe, it fired concentrated argent energy. Here, it would fire warp energy turned against itself. The mathematics were similar enough. Energy in, energy out. Demons die. The weapon charged with a rising whine that made nearby space marines instinctively step back. Brother Gaius raised his hand. "Wait! That energy signature, if you fire that into a warp rift, the feedback could..." The Slayer fired. Green death erupted from the weapon's muzzle. The blast wave vaporized every demon within 30 meters. The energy bolt struck the rift's edge and detonated. Reality screamed. The warp recoiled like flesh from flame. For 3 seconds, the rift actually contracted, and through it, the Slayer could see into Khorne's domain itself. He saw the brass citadel, saw the rivers of blood, saw the throne of skulls where the blood god sat, and Khorne saw him. The moment stretched, god and mortal locked in mutual recognition. Khorne had watched warriors for eons, had claimed the mightiest champions, had broken saints and kings. But this one was different. This one had killed demons not for glory or faith, but because it was what he did, what he was. Pure, uncomplicated, perfect. Khorne wanted him more than he'd wanted anything in 10,000 years. The blood god's will manifested. 8 bloodthirsters materialized simultaneously around the rift. Not the lesser, greater demons the Slayer had already killed. These were Khorne's chosen. Each had commanded legions in the Great Crusade. Each bore names that made chapter masters recite prayers of warding, and Grath the Unbound stepped forward, its axe still wet with the blood of a Titan legion. Mortal, the blood god has noticed you. Kneel, serve, become eternal in his glory. The Slayer's response was to holster the BFG and draw his super shotgun. And Grath's expression, if demons could be said to have expressions, shifted from anticipation to rage. Then die. The 8 bloodthirsters attacked in perfect coordination. Battle-tested strategy honed over millennia. Pincer movements. Overlapping kill zones. Psychic pressure designed to crush mortal minds. The Slayer had fought worse odds in hell. He glory-killed the first bloodthirster, a technique perfected across eons, turning demon flesh into health and ammunition. Grabbed its horn, vaulted onto its back, ripped its jaw off with his bare hands, then used the bone fragment to stab through another demon's eye. The Praetor suit absorbed their essence, converted it to energy, fed it back to him. In the warp, Khorne leaned forward on his throne. This was entertainment. The Ultramarines could only watch. Brother Amadeus's Auspex had stopped providing coherent data. The combat was too fast, too violent, too impossible for mortal technology to track. They saw flashes, the Slayer moving between bloodthirsters like lightning, weapons appearing and disappearing from his arsenal, a rocket launcher, a plasma rifle, something that looked like it fired miniature suns. Gaius opened a Vox channel to Captain Titus. He's engaging 8 greater demons simultaneously. Correction, 7. He just killed Angrath. Captain, he killed Angrath the Unbound in 12 seconds. Titus's response was silence. Then, continue observation, do not engage, and pray to the Emperor this warrior is on our side. The Slayer wasn't on anyone's side. He simply killed demons. When the 8th bloodthirster fell, its essence dissipating back into the warp, he reloaded his shotgun and looked at the rift again. Still open, still bleeding Khorne's will into reality. He needed more firepower. The Slayer reached to his back and drew something the Mechanicus would have declared tech heresy on sight. A weapon that violated 17 principles of physics and incorporated technology that predated human civilization. The Unmaker, designed to seal hell rifts by overloading them with so much death that even the warp couldn't sustain the breach. He aimed at the rift's center and fired. Reality folded, the warp shrieked, and Khorne, watching from his throne, began to laugh. The rift collapsed in on itself like a dying star. Warp energy imploded, dragging the edges of reality together with a sound that shattered every window for 3 kilometers. When the light faded and the psychic pressure released, Vaxus Tertius's sky was its natural gray once more. The demons that hadn't been pulled back screamed as reality reasserted itself, their forms destabilizing without the warp's constant feed. The Slayer methodically executed each one. 37 kills in 4 minutes. When the last demon dissipated, he stood in the center of a scorched plaza, surrounded by space marines who didn't know whether to salute or open fire. Inquisitor Voke approached cautiously, rosette held high. "Warrior, I am Inquisitor Cassian Voke of the Ordo Malleus. In the name of the God Emperor of mankind, I would speak with you." The Slayer's visor turned toward him. Still no words. No acknowledgement of imperial authority. Just that cold, evaluating stare. "You have saved this world, killed demons that would have required entire companies of Astartes. The Imperium would know who or what you are." The Slayer's only response was to begin walking toward the next concentration of warp taint. His suit's sensors detected 3 kilometers northeast. Residual demon presence. Needed killing. Brother Gaius stepped into his path. 7 feet of ceramite and gene-enhanced muscle. "The Inquisitor asked you a question, warrior. We cannot allow you to simply—" The Slayer looked up at him. Gaius had faced down orc war bosses without flinching, had stood against tyrannid carnifexes, but something in that visor's gaze made his gene-engineered instincts scream warnings. This wasn't hostility, it was something colder, a complete absence of concern for anything except the mission. The Slayer stepped around him and kept walking. "Restrain him," Voke ordered. 4 ultramarines moved to comply. Brother Castor reached for the Slayer's shoulder. The response was instantaneous. The Slayer's hand caught Castor's wrist, twisted, and the Space Marine found himself face down on the rockcrete before his enhanced reflexes could process the movement. Not hurt, not damaged, just neutralized. The other 3 hesitated. "Stand down," Captain Titus's voice crackled over the Vox. He'd been monitoring from orbit. "Do not engage. That's an order." Gaius helped Castor to his feet. The Space Marine's pride was wounded more than his body. "Brother Sergeant, I know what he did, brother, and I know we're not equipped to stop him." Gaius switched channels. "Captain, your orders?" Aboard the Blade of Macraga, Titus weighed his options. Every tactical doctrine said, contain the unknown. Every instinct said this warrior wasn't a threat to the Imperium, and every daemon he killed was one less for Imperial forces to face. Shadow him. Full tactical distance. If he moves against Imperial citizens or assets, you are authorized to engage. Otherwise, we observe and learn. For 6 days, the Slayer carved a path across Vaxus Tertius. The planet had 17 active warp-corrupted zones. He cleared 11 of them. The Ultramarines followed, watched him develop patterns. He never slept, never ate that they could observe, never showed fatigue. When his armor took damage, and even the Praetor suit couldn't survive greater demon claws unscathed, it seemed to repair itself, drawing energy from his kills. And he was getting stronger. Inquisitor Voke documented everything. The way warp corruption slid off the Slayer like water off ceramite. How demons reacted to his presence with confusion before rage, as if they recognized something in him that didn't belong in this reality. How he seemed to absorb their essence when he killed them, the energy feeding back into his suit's systems. On the 7th day, something changed. A new rift opened in the northern wastes, larger than the others, more stable, and through it came, and not Khorne's servants, but Tzeentch's, horrors and flamers, creatures of change and impossible geometry. Leading them was a chaos sorcerer in ornate armor, his form flickering between states of being. The sorcerer's name was Malthius the Changer, and he'd served the Architect of Fate for 3,000 years. He'd witnessed the Slayer's rampage through the warp's reflection and had come with specific orders. Study this anomaly, understand it, find its weakness, and if possible, corrupt it. Fascinating, Malthius spoke, his voice layered with a dozen harmonics. A warrior immune to corruption, a soul the warp cannot touch. Such a thing should not exist, yet here you stand. The Slayer loaded shells into his combat shotgun. Khorne sees you as a trophy, a challenge to break, but Lord Tzeentch sees deeper. You are a variable the great architect did not predict, an impossibility made flesh. Malthaeus gestured and reality bent around his fingers. What knowledge do you carry, Silent One? What secrets hide behind that visor? The Slayer fired. Malthaeus dissolved into ravens that scattered and reformed 10 meters away. Violence, how predictable, how cornate. The sorcerer's tone carried disappointment. But you are not Khorne's creature, are you? You serve no god, follow no doctrine. You are a blank slate upon which the changer of ways could write such wonders. Pink and blue horrors swarmed forward. The Slayer switched to the plasma rifle, fired in controlled bursts, each shot perfectly placed, each horror unmade. But they split when killed, pink becoming blue, blue becoming brimstone. Mathematics of multiplication. Kill one, face two. Malthaeus laughed. You cannot kill change itself, warrior. For every demon you destroy, the architect creates more. Your war is infinite, your purpose futile, but surrender to Tzeentch, and I can offer you something hell never could, understanding, knowledge of why you fight, purpose beyond rage. The Slayer holstered the plasma rifle, drew the crucible. Its energy blade ignited, and Malthaeus's psychic senses recoiled from the wrongness of it. That weapon didn't just kill, it erased, removed things from existence entirely. What is that? For the first time, uncertainty crept into the sorcerer's voice. The Slayer answered by cutting through 18 horrors in a single swing. Their multiplication stopped. Their essence didn't split or reform. It simply ended. Malthaeus began to retreat back toward his rift. Lord Tzeentch will want to know of this. A weapon that denies the warp's laws. The Imperium doesn't deserve such power. The Slayer threw the crucible like a spear. It crossed 40 meters in an eye blink, struck Malthaeus through the chest, and pinned him to the ground. The sorcerer's immortality meant nothing against that blade. 3,000 years of service to chaos ended in a scream of disbelief. The Slayer walked over, retrieved his weapon, and watched the rift collapse, without the sorcerer to maintain it. Watching from concealment, Brother Gaius made the sign of the Aquila. 2 Chaos champions in 6 days. Emperor, protect us. What have we found? The inquisitorial fortress on Vaxus Tertius had survived the demon incursions through a combination of blessed architecture and sheer stubbornness. Its obsidian walls were carved with wards that predated the heresy, each one maintained by servitors who knew nothing but their eternal task. In the interrogation chambers 3 levels below the chapel, Inquisitor Voke prepared for the most important examination of his career. The Slayer had finally stopped moving, not because the Ultramarines had convinced him, not because Imperial authority meant anything to him. He'd stopped because Vaxus Tertius was clean. Every demon-touched zone purged, every warp rift sealed, 17 locations, 14 days, 463 confirmed demon kills, including 9 greater demons and 2 chaos champions. The planet was silent for the first time in months. When the Slayer turned toward the inquisitorial fortress and began walking, Voke had exactly one chance to get this right. Restrain him and risk the Imperium's wrath falling on the one asset that could kill demons with such efficiency. Let him leave and lose the opportunity to understand what he was. Voke chose option 3. He met the Slayer at the fortress gates personally, alone, his servo skull recording every moment. I'm not here to restrain you, warrior, or to convert you, or to waste your time with Imperial doctrine you clearly don't accept. He gestured to the fortress. I'm here to understand. and to prove to my superiors that you're not a threat to mankind." The Slayer's visor tracked to him, calculating. "You've saved millions of lives on this world, but the Inquisition has standing orders. All unknowns are threats until proven otherwise. I need to test you for corruption, for warp taint, for—" Voke hesitated. "For whatever makes you immune to things that corrupt Grey Knights." A long pause. Then the Slayer walked through the gates. The testing chamber was a perfect cube, 20 meters per side, every surface inscribed with hexagrammic wards. At its center sat a throne of blackened iron, restraints open and waiting. Around the perimeter stood 6 psychers in psychic hoods, their minds linked to dampening fields that could suppress even alpha-level psychic phenomena. "Sit," Voke instructed, not expecting compliance. The Slayer sat, didn't resist when the restraints closed, didn't react when the psychers began their probes. He'd endured worse in hell. Hayden's experiments, the divinity machine, the betrayer's tortures. This was nothing. The first psycher, an elderly woman named Esther with 80 years of service, reached out with her mind to touch the Slayer's soul. Her psychic sight pierced the material world, seeing the warp's reflection in all things. When she touched the Slayer's essence, she gasped, "Inquisitor, I can't, there's nothing there." "Explain." "Not nothing, but—" Esther's voice trembled. "Imagine a stone in a river. The water flows around it but never touches it. The warp sees him, acknowledges him, but cannot affect him. It's like he's sealed, protected by something older than the Emperor's light." The second psyker, a younger man named Dorian, pushed harder, tried to find cracks in the Slayer's defenses, found something instead that made him recoil, blood streaming from his nose. "There's rage in him, Emperor's throne, such rage, an ocean of it, but it's not Khornity corruption. It's cold, focused, eternal. He's been angry for so long, it's become part of his existence." Voke made notes on his data slate. "Can this rage be corrupted, turned?" "No," said Esther with absolute certainty. "Khorne cannot claim anger this pure. The blood god feeds on rage that destroys the self. This warrior's rage strengthens him, defines him. It's incorruptible because it has no weakness to exploit." The third test involved exposure. Voke had brought a fragment of warpstone, crystallized chaos energy, confiscated from a heretic cult. Even sealed in a blessed container, it radiated corruption that made normal humans nauseous. He placed it 3 meters from the Slayer. Nothing, no reaction. The Slayer's vital signs, what little the Auspex could read through his armor, remained steady. Voke moved it closer, 1 meter. Still nothing. "In the name of the Emperor," Voke whispered. He opened the container fully. The warpstone pulsed with sickly light, each pulse a psychic assault that sent the chamber's psychers to their knees. Voke himself felt his mind bending, heard whispers promising power, knowledge, pleasure, acceptance. The Slayer sat unmoved, looked at the warpstone with the same dispassion he'd shown everything else. It was corruption. He'd been surrounded by corruption for eons. This was ambient noise. After 30 seconds, Voke sealed the container. His hands shook. Impossible. Even Grey Knights need wards and prayers against direct exposure. You just sat there. The fourth test was the most dangerous. Voke had hoped to avoid it, but his superiors would demand absolute proof. He activated the psychic beacon, a device that sent a signal into the warp itself. A call, an invitation. "Come, demons, here is prey." Within 20 seconds, a demonette of Slaanesh materialized in the chamber's protective circle. The Keeper of Secrets' servant wore beauty like a weapon, its form designed to seduce and corrupt. It saw the Slayer and smiled with too many mouths. "Oh, what have we here?" Its voice was silk and razors. "A warrior who doesn't kneel to Khorne. who doesn't scheme with Tzeentch, who doesn't embrace Grandfather Nurgle, but surely it moved closer to the circle's edge. Surely you understand pleasure, the joy of victory, the ecstasy of the kill. Slaanesh offers perfection, silent one, every sensation heightened, every... The Slayer looked at it the same way he'd looked at every demon. Target, threat, requires killing. The demonette's smile faltered. You don't feel it, the pull, the temptation. How? It pressed against the circle's barrier, genuinely confused. Even the pure feel something, curiosity, disgust that masks fascination, but you feel nothing. You're broken, incomplete. What are you? Voke banished it before the Slayer could break free and kill it. The restraints wouldn't have held him if he'd decided to move. They both knew that. Final test, Voke said quietly, then you're free to go. He held up a purity seal blessed by a living saint, pressed it to the Slayer's armor, waited for rejection. Blessed objects burned the corrupt, scorched the tainted. Nothing happened. The seal adhered perfectly, as if the Slayer's armor accepted the Emperor's blessing without question or resistance. Voke stepped back. You're clean. Emperor's throne, you're actually clean. After 14 days of demon killing, warp rift exposure, chaos champion combat, you're uncorrupted, untainted, unbroken. He opened the restraints. Personally, I'll report to my superiors that you pose no threat to the Imperium, that you're a weapon against chaos we should deploy, not destroy. The Slayer stood, didn't acknowledge the Inquisitor's words, simply walked toward the exit. Wait, Voke called. Don't you want to know why you're immune? What makes you different? The Slayer paused at the doorway. For a moment, Voke thought he might actually speak. Instead, the warrior reached up and tapped the side of his helmet twice. The gesture was clear enough. I don't care why. I just kill demons. Then he was gone. Voke stood in the empty chamber, data slate full of readings that would change imperial doctrine on demon fighting. For the first time in 40 years of inquisitorial service, he allowed himself to hope. If one warrior could resist chaos this completely, perhaps the Imperium wasn't doomed after all. He was wrong, of course, but the hope felt good while it lasted. The summons came 3 weeks later. Roboute Guilliman, Lord Commander of the Imperium, did not request. He commanded. The message reached the Slayer on the hive world of Mordian Prime, where he'd been systematically purging a Nurgle cult that had infested the Underhive. By the time the Ultramarines arrived with the Lord Commander's orders, the Slayer had already killed the Plaguecaster leading the cult and sealed 2 warp rifts. With a combination of extreme violence and weapons technology the Mechanicus was still trying to classify. The Ultramarines explained the situation. Guilliman wanted to meet him, personally, aboard the Macraga's Honor, the Primarch's flagship. It was not a request that could be ignored. The Slayer looked at them, looked at the coordinates they provided, and went back to killing plague bearers. Captain Titus tried a different approach. The Lord Commander could order your termination, could declare you a threat and deploy entire chapters to stop you. Instead, he offers audience, respect for what you've accomplished. The Slayer paused mid-reload. The logic was sound enough. He'd cleared 18 worlds in 3 weeks, killed demons by the thousands. But there were billions more, trillions, an infinite war across an infinite galaxy. Meeting with their leader changed nothing, except it might give him access to better intelligence, bigger targets, more demons. The Slayer nodded once and followed them to the Thunderhawk. The Macraga's Honor was a city in the void. 10 kilometers of consecrated metal and ancient weapon systems, crewed by 50,000 souls and protected by enough firepower to crack planets. The Slayer registered none of it. Just another fortress, just another staging ground. They brought him to the Strategium. Roboute Guilliman stood before a hololithic display showing the Great Rift, a psychic wound that split the galaxy in half, bleeding chaos into reality on a scale that made individual demon incursions look insignificant. The Primarch turned as the Slayer entered, and for the first time in weeks, the warrior faced something that gave him pause. Guilliman stood nearly 10 feet tall in his armor. Gene-crafted perfection, the Emperor's son, a demigod who'd built empires and shattered civilizations. Power radiated from him, not warp corruption, but pure genetic superiority married to 10,000 years of strategic genius. He was what humanity could become if it survived. What it had almost been before the heresy broke everything. "Leave us," Guilliman ordered. The Ultramarines hesitated, then obeyed. Even Captain Titus withdrew, though his reluctance was evident. When they were alone, Guilliman studied the Slayer with eyes that had witnessed the Emperor himself. Inquisitor Voke's report was illuminating, a warrior immune to corruption, capable of killing greater demons solo, operating at near Astartes combat efficiency despite baseline human physiology, and utterly silent. The Slayer said nothing. His visor tracked Guilliman's movements, calculating threat potential out of pure habit. "You don't serve the Emperor, don't acknowledge Imperial authority, don't even seem to understand why we fight." Guilliman's voice carried weight that could break lesser men. "Yet you kill demons with more efficiency than my best companies. Why?" The Slayer's response was to tap his helmet twice, the same gesture he'd given Voke. "I don't care why. I just kill demons." Guilliman's expression shifted, something between frustration and grim amusement. "You're the first being in 10,000 years to completely ignore my authority without being an enemy. Refreshing in a way." He gestured to the hololithic display. "But I didn't summon you for philosophy. I summoned you because the Imperium is dying, and you represent something we desperately need." The display zoomed to show conflict zones. Red markers indicated demon incursions. There were thousands of them, across the galaxy, simultaneous, overwhelming. The 13th Black Crusade succeeded. Cadia fell. The Great Rift tears reality itself, and chaos pours through faster than we can contain it. I have 1,000,000 worlds to protect, and not enough warriors to do it. Guilliman looked at the Slayer directly. "You've cleared 23 worlds in 3 weeks. 23 worlds my forces would have taken months to reclaim, if we could reclaim them at all. That's not luck, that's not faith, that's pure, brutal efficiency." The Slayer waited. There was a point coming. Leaders always had points. "I want to deploy you, give you access to Imperial intelligence networks, show you where the demon incursions are worst, point you at the biggest targets and let you do what you do best." Guilliman's voice hardened. "But I need to know you won't turn on the Imperium, won't become another threat I have to contain." The Slayer considered this. In Hell, he'd worked with the UAC when their interests aligned, used their resources, their portal technology, their weapons, then destroyed them when they proved corrupted beyond redemption. This Imperium was brutal, fascistic, built on suffering and lies, but it fought demons, and right now that was enough. The Slayer nodded. "Once. Agreement. Temporary alliance. For as long as their goals aligned." Guilliman recognized the gesture for what it was. Not loyalty, not faith, just tactical cooperation. In a galaxy burning with heresy and corruption, he'd take it. "Then hear this, Silent Warrior. I'm authorizing Inquisitor Voke to coordinate your deployments. He'll provide intelligence on the worst demon incursions. You'll have access to Imperial transport, resupply where needed, and authority to operate independently." The Primarch moved closer, his presence filling the strategium. But understand, the Imperium demands sacrifice. The worlds you save will cost billions of lives in the process. Populations will be purged for exposure to chaos. Cities will burn to deny the enemy resources. You'll watch us commit atrocities in the Emperor's name because the alternative is extinction. Guilliman's expression was granite. Can you accept that? Can you kill demons for an empire built on bones? The Slayer had seen civilizations fall, had watched humanity's colonies burn, had witnessed hell consume entire realities. He understood triage, understood that sometimes survival meant terrible choices. He'd made them himself, would make them again. He met Guilliman's gaze and nodded. Then we have an accord. Guilliman activated his Vox. Voke, report to the Strategium. Bring your worst intelligence assessments. We have a weapon to deploy. As the Inquisitors scrambled to comply, Guilliman turned back to the Slayer. They'll call you the Emperor's angel, a living saint sent to save us. Let them believe it if it gives them hope. But between us, I know the truth. His voice dropped to something only they could hear. You're not here to save the Imperium. You're here because we have more demons than anyone else. We're just the largest hunting ground you've found. The Slayer didn't confirm or deny. Didn't need to. Guilliman smiled grimly. Good, then let's give you targets worthy of your hatred. The first target Guilliman assigned was a demon world called Pythos Secundus. Once an imperial shrine world with a population of 6 billion, it had fallen to Slaanesh 2 years prior, when a cult of pleasure seekers opened 17 simultaneous warp rifts during the festival of the Emperor's Ascension. The planetary governor had been the cult's leader. Half the ecclesiarchy had been complicit. By the time the Imperium responded, Pythos Secundus had already slipped fully into the warp's embrace. Now it was a nightmare realm where reality bent to Slaanesh's whims, cities of living flesh, cathedrals that screamed, oceans of narcotics and sensory overload. The populations that survived were so corrupted that even the Inquisition's most radical members advocated exterminatus, orbital bombardment until nothing remained but radioactive glass. Guilliman sent the Slayer instead. The insertion was violent. No stealth approach, no reconnaissance. The Thunderhawk screamed through Pythos, Secundus's psychedelic atmosphere, and dropped the Slayer directly into the planetary capital's central plaza. What had once been a monument to the Emperor now pulsed with obscene carvings and impossible geometries that hurt to perceive. The Slayer hit the ground, combat shotgun already in hand. Demonettes emerged from shadows that shouldn't exist. Dozens of them, hundreds. They moved with hypnotic grace, their forms designed to seduce and horrify in equal measure. Their voices promised everything: pleasure, power, belonging, an end to the eternal rage. The Slayer's response was both barrels to the nearest demon's face. The battle that followed was unlike anything he'd fought before. Khorne's servants were straightforward. They charged, you killed them. Tzeentch's were convoluted but ultimately physical. Nurgle's were resilient but slow. Slaanesh's demons fought like artists, each movement perfect, each attack choreographed for maximum psychological impact. They tried seduction. The Slayer killed them. They tried horror. The Slayer killed them. They tried offering him transcendence beyond his rage, promises that he could finally rest, finally feel something other than hatred. The Slayer killed them faster. A keeper of secrets materialized in the plaza's center, a greater demon of Slaanesh, 15 feet of deadly grace and impossible beauty. Its form shifted constantly, adapting to become whatever might tempt the observer. For the Slayer, it became nothing, just another demon, just another target. You fascinate us, Silent One, the Keeper purred, its voice like honey laced with venom. Khorne wants to break you, Tzeentch wants to understand you, Nurgle wants to preserve you, but we... It smiled with a mouth that contained infinities. We want to complete you. You've been angry so long you've forgotten what else existence offers. Let us remind you. Let us show you sensation beyond violence. The Slayer drew the crucible. The Keeper's expression shifted, the first hint of concern. That blade, it erases, removes, denies the very concept of eternal return. We cannot come back from that death. You would rob us of our immortality, The Slayer crossed 20 meters in 2 seconds and drove the crucible through the demon's chest. The Keeper's scream was music and agony, sensation compressed into sound, then silence as it ceased to exist. But Pythos Secundus was a demon world. Reality itself was Slaanesh's playground here. The plaza's geometry inverted, gravity became a suggestion. The Slayer found himself fighting on walls that were floors, in spaces where distance was negotiable and time ran backwards in corners. He adapted, had fought in Hell's non-Euclidean spaces, had battled across dimensions where physics were optional. This was familiar territory. For 6 hours he carved through the capital, every demon killed, every cult temple burned, every pleasure palace demolished with rocket launchers and plasma fire. The Praetor suit's systems absorbed the warp energy saturating the world, converting corruption into fuel, turning Slaanesh's own essence against itself. Then the trap sprung. The entire city folded inward, and the Slayer found himself in a space that couldn't exist. A cathedral of sensation, where every surface was a nerve ending, every shadow a promise, every light a caress. At its center stood a figure that made the Keeper of Secrets look like a pale imitation, not a greater demon. Something worse. A demon prince of Slaanesh who'd once been a human warrior named Callus the Sublime. He'd fallen during the Horus Heresy, trading his soul for perfection in combat, sensation, and existence itself. 10,000 years of service to the Prince of Pleasure had made him something beyond mortal comprehension. Finally, Callus breathed, his form rippling with colors that didn't exist in baseline reality. I've waited weeks for you, watched your rampage across our domain, seen you resist temptations that broke chapter masters. He drew a blade that sang with psychic resonance. You cannot be seduced, cannot be corrupted, cannot be broken by pleasure or pain. So we'll try something different. The demon prince attacked with speed that exceeded even the Slayer's combat instincts. That blade, forged from crystallized screams, carved through the air where the Slayer's head had been a microsecond before. The Slayer rolled, fired the super shotgun, watched Callus dodge with movements that defied skeletal structure. We won't tempt you, Callus laughed, pressing the attack. We'll perfect you, show you that your rage, your hatred, your endless war, they're just other forms of sensation. You're already Slaanesh's servant and don't even know it. Every demon you kill, you feel satisfaction. Every victory, a moment of pleasure. You're addicted to the hunt, to the kill. You've been one of us all along. The words meant nothing. The Slayer had heard every justification, every rationalization. Hayden had claimed his rage made him no better than the demons. The priests of hell had said he was their dark reflection. Samuel Hayden had insisted he was just a weapon, no different from the guns he carried. They'd all been wrong, and they'd all died or been left broken in his wake. The Slayer switched tactics, drew the BFG 9000 mid-dodge, and fired point blank. The energy blast caught Callus in the chest, and for 3 seconds, the demon prince's perfect form came apart. Flesh unraveled, warp stuff spilled free. The scream was exquisite agony, but Slaanesh rewarded sensation of all kinds. Pain was just another flavor. Callus reformed, laughing, bleeding ichor that turned into singing serpents before hitting the ground. Yes, perfect, more! The Slayer realized the problem. On a demon world empowered by Slaanesh directly, this demon prince could regenerate infinitely. Every wound was pleasure, every death temporary. This wasn't a fight, it was an eternal stalemate the demon would enjoy forever. He needed to change the battlefield. The Slayer holstered his weapons and ran, not retreat. Tactical repositioning. Callus gave chase, laughing, promising sensations beyond imagining. The Slayer sprinted through the corrupted city, his suit's sensors scanning for what he needed. There, a weak point in reality, a place where Pythos Secundus's connection to the warp was thinnest, where the material universe still remembered what the planet had been. The Slayer planted charges, every explosive in his arsenal, then activated a beacon on a frequency the Mechanicus had provided, a one-time weapon, forbidden technology from the Dark Age, a device that would temporarily stabilize reality in a localized area, forcing the warp to retreat for exactly 30 seconds. Callus arrived, still smiling, running from sensation. How disappointing. The Slayer triggered both, the explosives and the reality anchor. For 30 seconds, Pythos Secundus was a normal world again, just rock and ruined buildings, no warp connection, no demon energy, no Slaanesh, and Callus, cut off from his patron, was just very old flesh in a material universe that didn't support his existence. The demon prince's smile died. No, you can't. The Slayer drew the crucible and took his head. When the anchor failed and the warp came rushing back, Callus was already erased. True killed. Gone. The Slayer stood in the epicenter, surrounded by Pythos Secundus's returning corruption, and reloaded calmly. The world would fall eventually. Slaanesh would reclaim it. But the demon prince was gone. One less eternal threat. Aboard the Macraga's Honor, Guilliman watched the picked feed and made a decision. Prepare the full target list. Every demon world, every chaos stronghold, every place we've written off as lost. He looked at his commanders. We're taking them back, one silent warrior at a time. The message from Khorne came carved into the hull of an ultramarine's battle barge. Not written, carved, with claws that shouldn't exist in real space. 50-meter letters that bled continuously, spelling out a challenge in a language older than the Imperium. Come to the brass citadel, face me, or I will drown your galaxy in blood until you do. Guilliman read the translation and felt something he rarely experienced, genuine concern, a direct challenge from a chaos god. This is unprecedented. Even during the heresy, the ruinous powers acted through proxies, champions, manipulation. Khorne is offering single combat. Inquisitor Voke stood in the strategium, his augmetic eye whirring as it analyzed the bloody script. It's a trap. Obviously, Khorne wants the Slayer in the warp itself, in his own domain where reality bends to the blood god's will. We cannot allow... The Slayer walked past them both toward the armory. The decision was already made. Wait, Guilliman commanded, his voice carrying the weight that could stop armies. The Slayer paused. You understand what this means? Khorne doesn't just want to kill you. He wants to break you, corrupt you, turn you into his greatest champion. In the warp, gods are omnipotent within their domains. You'll be fighting infinite power on its home ground. The Slayer turned, looked at Guilliman, and tapped his helmet twice. The Primarch had learned to read that gesture. I don't care. Demons need killing. He's going to do it regardless of our orders, Voke said quietly. We could try to stop him, but we'd fail. Guilliman finished. He studied the silent warrior who'd cleared 32 demon worlds in 6 weeks, who'd killed more demons than entire chapters managed in centuries, who'd never once hesitated, never once showed fear, never once stopped moving forward. Very well, if you're going into the warp, you'll need a way back. The Mechanicus has theoretical technology, a warp beacon that can punch through from the immaterium to real space, untested, likely to explode, but it's the only chance you have of returning. The Slayer accepted the device, a fist-sized object covered in hexagrammic wards and Mechanicus prayer seals. Mag locked it to his armor next to the crucible. "Emperor, protect you," Guilliman said, though he wasn't sure the Emperor's light reached where the Slayer was going. The ritual to open a controlled warp rift required 3 sanctioned psychers, 17 human sacrifices, criminals already condemned to execution, and coordinates carved into the fabric of reality itself. The Slayer stood in the center of the summoning circle as the psychers chanted in languages that predated human civilization. The sacrifices screamed, reality tore, and the Slayer stepped into hell. Not his hell, Khorne's. The brass citadel existed at the center of the blood god's domain, a fortress that defied comprehension, built from the weapons of every warrior who'd ever died in combat, cemented together with blood from 1 trillion battlefields. Its walls stretched into infinity, its towers scraped against the concept of sky. Rivers of gore flowed through streets paved with skulls, and standing before its main gate, waiting, was Khorne, not an avatar, not a manifestation, the god himself, impossible to describe in mortal terms, 50 feet tall and simultaneously larger than galaxies, covered in brass armor that was also his skin, muscles built from concentrated violence, a face that was all rage and hunger and respect for the worthy, in his hand a sword that had ended stars. "You came." Khorne's voice was the sound of every battle ever fought compressed into words. "I knew you would. Warriors like us cannot resist the challenge, cannot turn away from worthy combat." The Slayer drew his super shotgun. "Answer enough." Khorne laughed, a sound that shook the foundations of his own realm. "No words, no boasts, no prayers or curses. Perfect, you understand. War needs no justification, no explanation, only execution." The blood god attacked. The first blow would have vaporized a titan. The Slayer dodged, the ground where he'd stood exploding into molten brass. Returned fire, both barrels. The shots struck Khorne's armor and ricocheted into the blood rivers, doing less damage than insect bites. This wasn't a fight the Slayer could win through conventional means. Khorne was a god in his own domain, fueled by every act of violence in the galaxy, empowered by war itself. Shooting him was like trying to kill war by firing bullets at the concept, but the Slayer had killed concepts before. He switched tactics, dodged instead of engaging, led Khorne on a chase through the brass citadel, through courtyards where demons fought eternally, past forges where demon weapons were born from screams and hatred. The blood god pursued, amused, patient. This was entertainment. This was worship through combat. The Slayer found what he needed, the throne of skulls, Khorne's seat of power, a mountain of craniums from every being that had died violently since time began. Billions, trillions, infinite. The throne pulsed with power, feeding Khorne, sustaining his existence. The Slayer planted every explosive he carried, every charge, every mine, everything. Khorne saw and understood. You cannot destroy the throne. It is eternal, built from violence itself. While any being anywhere commits murder, the throne stands. You would need to end violence across the galaxy to... The Slayer activated the BFG 9000's overcharge mode, a modification he'd made himself, designed for exactly this scenario. It would fire once, consume the weapon entirely, and unleash energy equivalent to a dying star in a single concentrated blast. He aimed at the throne's foundation and fired. The explosion was visible from real space. Across the galaxy, psychers screamed as the warp convulsed. The throne of skulls cracked, not destroyed. Khorne spoke truth about its eternal nature, but wounded, damaged in a way it hadn't been since the war in heaven. Khorne staggered, his power flickering, not defeated, not even truly hurt, but surprised, shocked that a mortal could actually harm something fundamental to his existence. The blood god looked at the Slayer with something like respect. "You are worthy, more worthy than any champion I have claimed in 10 million years. Serve me. Willingly, I will make you eternal, give you war without end across infinite realities. Together we will drown universes in blood and glory." The Slayer drew the crucible. Khorne's respect deepened. "You refuse godhood, refuse power, refuse everything except your war. You are—" The blood god paused. "Incorruptible, unbreakable, the perfect warrior, and you will never be mine." The Slayer activated the Mechanicus beacon. Reality tore, a hole back to the Materium. "Go then," Khorne said. "Return to your Imperium, kill my servants, wound my domain. It changes nothing. War is eternal. I am eternal, and you—" The god smiled. "You are mine whether you accept it or not. Every demon you kill feeds me. Every battle you fight strengthens me. You are my most devoted servant precisely because you refuse to serve." The Slayer stepped through the portal. Behind him, Khorne's laughter followed. The Slayer emerged from the warp in the Macraga's Honors Sanctuary Chapel, surrounded by 50 Grey Knights with Stormbolters trained on the portal. Precedent demanded it. Anything returning from the warp's depths was assumed corrupted until proven otherwise. Even for him, especially for him, Grand Master Vorth Mordrak of the Grey Knights' Third Brotherhood stepped forward, Nemesis Force sword crackling with psychic energy. His chapter specialized in demon hunting, their gene seed modified to resist warp corruption. Every battle brother a trained psyker. They'd purged worlds, executed entire populations exposed to chaos. Mercy was not in their vocabulary. "Stand fast," Mordrak commanded. "You will submit to psychic examination. You will answer questions under psi interrogation. You will prove you returned uncorrupted, or you will die here. These are non-negotiable terms." The Slayer's armor was scorched. One pauldron cracked. His visor flickered with damage. He'd fought a god, in that god's own realm, and survived, but the cost was visible. He stood motionless as the Grey Knights' librarians extended their psychic senses, probing for taint. Brother Librarian Castian went first, his third eye opening as he peered into the Slayer's soul. What he saw made him stagger. "Grand Master, there's nothing, no corruption, no demonic taint. No mark from Khorne despite direct contact with the blood god. It's like the warp slides off him. I don't understand how. A second librarian confirmed. A third. All reached the same impossible conclusion. The Slayer had walked into Khorne's domain, challenged the god directly, damaged the throne of skulls itself, and returned exactly as corrupted as when he'd left, which was to say, not at all. Mordrak lowered his blade. In 300 years of service, I have never witnessed anything like this. You should be a gibbering chaos spawn, a puppet of the blood god, a demon prince howling for skulls. Instead, he gestured to his librarians. You're clean, Emperor's throne, you're actually clean. The Slayer walked past them toward the armory. His suit needed repairs, his weapons needed resupply. The war continued. Guilliman was waiting in the strategium, and his expression was carefully neutral when the Slayer arrived. The Grey Knights report you're uncorrupted. Inquisitor Vok's latest scans confirm it. You went into the warp itself, fought Khorne directly, and came back unchanged. The Primarch paused. But Khorne said something to you, didn't he? The last words before you left. The Slayer stopped, looked at Guilliman. The Primarch's psychic sensitivity, weaker than a trained psyker but still superhuman, had caught echoes of that final exchange. He claimed you serve him whether you accept it or not, that every demon you kill strengthens him. Every battle you fight feeds war itself. Guilliman's voice was quiet. Is he right? The Slayer considered the question. In hell, Samuel Hayden had said something similar, that fighting demons made him part of the cycle, that his rage was just hell's reflection. The Slayer had never cared about philosophy, had never needed justification. Demons existed. He killed them. The reasoning didn't matter. He tapped his helmet twice and turned to leave. Wait, Guilliman's command stopped him. I need to know if deploying you makes things worse, if Khorne grows stronger every time you fight, if we're feeding the very enemy we're trying to destroy. The Slayer turned back, met the Primarch's gaze through his damaged visor, and for the first time since arriving in this galaxy, he reached up and removed his helmet. The face beneath was human, scarred, weathered by eons of combat, eyes that had witnessed civilizations fall and hell itself burn. No corruption, no mutation, just a man who'd been fighting for so long that fighting had become his existence. He spoke, one word, his voice rough from disuse, carrying the weight of eternal war. Good. Guilliman understood. If Khorne grew stronger from the Slayer's battles, good. Let the blood god feast on war. Let him grow fat on violence, because the Slayer would never stop, would never tire, would fight until either demon stopped existing or he did. And if that meant an eternal stalemate where Khorne gained power, while his servants died permanently, where chaos grew stronger while losing ground, the Slayer accepted that, had accepted it in hell, accepted it here. The war was the point, not victory, not peace, just the eternal act of resistance, of refusing to let demons win unopposed. You're insane, Vok breathed from the doorway, having arrived in time to witness the revelation. Functionally, clinically insane. You've been fighting for so long you've forgotten how to stop, forgotten why you started. You're just war incarnate. The Slayer replaced his helmet. The assessment was accurate enough. He'd lost track of time in hell, centuries, millennia, long enough that rage had calcified into purpose, long enough that the man he'd been, the Doom Marine who'd fought to save humanity, had been forged into something simpler, purer, a weapon that killed demons. He ignored all of it. 47 demon worlds purged, 8 chaos champions permanently killed, 3 greater demon incursions stopped before they began. The Slayer moved through the galaxy like a surgical strike, appearing wherever corruption festered, killing until nothing corrupted remained. Then moving on, the Imperium learned to follow in his wake. Where the Slayer cleared demons, Imperial Guard reclaimed territory. Where he sealed rifts, the Mechanicus rebuilt infrastructure. Where he killed Chaos champions, the Inquisition purged their cults. It was the most efficient demon-purging campaign in 10,000 years. But Khorne's words haunted Guilliman. Every victory fed the blood god. Every demon killed was worship through violence. The Slayer was simultaneously the Imperium's greatest weapon and Khorne's most devoted servant, and the contradiction was inescapable. "Does it matter?" Inquisitor Voke asked during one strategy session. "If Khorne grows stronger but loses territory, if the blood god feasts on war while his domain shrinks?" "It matters," Guilliman said, "because we're not winning, we're maintaining, fighting an eternal stalemate. The Imperium deserves better than endless war." "The Imperium," Voke replied quietly, "has known nothing but endless war for 10,000 years. Perhaps the Slayer is exactly what we deserve. Not a savior, not a saint, just reflection of what we've become." Across the galaxy, the Slayer continued his work. Didn't hear the debates about his nature, didn't care about theology or philosophy. There were demons in the next sector, reports of Nurgle cultists on a Forge world, a Slaanesh incursion threatening a Shrine world. He went to war. In the warp, all 4 Chaos gods watched with different emotions. Khorne with pride, Tzeentch with curiosity, Nurgle with patient affection, Slaanesh with frustrated desire. They'd tried to claim him, failed, would try again, would fail again, but they could wait. They were eternal, so was he. The Great Rift still tore reality. Chaos still threatened to devour the galaxy. The Imperium still fought a losing war on a billion fronts. Nothing fundamental had changed, except now, in the grim darkness of the far future, where there was only war, there was also the Slayer. And demons, for the first time in eternity, had learned to fear. The reports continue arriving at the Macraga's honor. Demon worlds cleansed, warp rifts sealed, Chaos champions erased. The Slayer operates across the Imperium Sanctus and even ventures into the Imperium Nihilus, the dark half of the galaxy cut off from the Astronomican's light. Where others see hopelessness, he sees targets. Guilliman watches the tactical displays and wonders if they've created something worse than the problem they're solving. A warrior so consumed by war that he's become war itself. An asset so valuable they cannot afford to lose it, yet so dangerous they cannot truly control it. But every demon the Slayer kills is one less threatening Imperial citizens. Every rift he seals is one less pathway for chaos. The mathematics are brutal but simple. He's worth the risk. The Slayer doesn't concern himself with imperial politics or theological debates about his nature. He's found what he always finds, an infinite supply of demons and an infinite war to fight. Whether this galaxy calls them demons or demons doesn't matter. Whether they serve Khorne or Slaanesh or Nurgle or Tzeentch doesn't change the fundamental truth. They exist. He kills them. The war continues. In the depths of the warp, Khorne sits upon his wounded throne and smiles. The Slayer will never serve him willingly, will never kneel, will never accept the blood god's gifts, but every daemon killed feeds the cycle of violence. Every battle fought strengthens war itself. The silent warrior is the perfect paradox, Khorne's greatest enemy and most devoted servant, locked in eternal contradiction. The Imperium has found its weapon against chaos. Chaos has found its eternal challenge. The galaxy has found a new constant in the equation of its own damnation. And the Slayer, he's found exactly what he wanted, another hell to purge, another eternity of war. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But now there is also the one who lives for it. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. More stories await.